is John Mpoha. I work for the Center for Studies Africa Taxation. I'm a senior associate, really focused on tax policy on Africa. So this morning, the time that we have, I believe it's still morning there. We look at income wealth taxation, exploring wealth taxation perspectives and experiences in selected countries. So before we dive deep, I just like to highlight what is that I'd like us to get from this session, the time that we have. We look at the income wealth taxation, specifically asking, what does wealth taxation mean? There is out of debate about wealth taxation. What are the policy objectives of a wealth tax system or wealth taxation? And what are the major challenges when it comes to wealth taxation? And perhaps there are some potential solutions that could help address the challenges as regards wealth taxation. And then I will highlight some of the country experiences, those who have implementing a wealth tax in different jurisdictions in Europe, Latin America, and Africa, and also share some of the emerging trends as regards this wealth tax that is taking space in the political debates, and some key reflections on when we want to design or implement a wealth tax, and then we'll conclude. But I would like to begin the end from the beginning. Maybe one day, why? This is where I would like us to, like the take-home message that I have. I would like to highlight this, starting with a quote from the French finance minister, Jean-Baptiste Colbert, who lived between 1618 and 1683. He stated, "The art of taxation consists in so plucking the goose, so obtain the largest possible number of feathers with the smallest possible amount of hissing." This means we should be able to design a tax system that we're able to maximize revenue collection with the smallest possible amount of complaints. This idea, for me, I find to be very fundamental when it comes to tax system, whatever, whether income taxation or wealth taxation. And it points to some of the key principles of taxation. I just want to highlight a few of them in light of this statement from the French finance minister. One, when you look at this, what he said, it points to the fact that about a tax system must be neutral in design. So when you design a tax system, we make sure that a tax system is designed in such a way that it does not distort the economic behavior of economic actors. It could be legal persons, it could be individuals. A neutral tax system is that one which does not influence an investor in terms of location of investment or the size of an investment. That is a neutral tax system. So the idea that when we think about this discussion about taxation, we must have that in mind. To say one of the principles of taxation is make sure that a tax system is neutral. Yes, so I was highlighting on some of the key principles in terms of taxation that speaks to this quote that have said from the French finance minister. I've said about the issue that when we design tax, make sure that it's neutral. It's one that does not distort the economic behavior of economic agents. It does not affect, it does not influence their decisions whether to invest at home or abroad. It should not affect the level of investment or the location of investment. That's number one. Number two, when it comes to principal taxation, that I would like to highlight in line to this this quote, it's about equity or fairness of tax system. A tax system must ensure that it's promoting vertical and horizontal equity. Vertical equity is about make sure that those who have high ability to pay, they should pay more than those who have less ability to pay. And this is fundamental when you look at different tax systems in terms of the progressive design, where you have different income tax brackets. And also it speaks about horizontal equity, that people in the same economic circumstances should bear the same burden of tax. And this is key even when we're designing
Recording in progress.
It's key when we're designing the wealth taxation, because it ensures to promote horizontal equity as well as vertical equity. Another aspect when it comes to another principle of taxation is make sure that a tax system must be simple and be administratable. What's the point of having a tax system when you cannot administer it? It speaks to being able to make sure that the tax measures or the tax design taxpayers can understand, and and also they can comply with. And it builds, or it helps to, in terms of certainty of taxpayers. So it must be simple and administrable. Another point that I want to highlight is that a tax system that we design must be stable and revenue adequacy, that it must be able to generate on a sustainable manner revenues that for financing of a budget or meeting various developmental needs of a country. And when I speak about stability or revenue adequacy, it has two aspects. One, stability in terms of revenue, and it speaks to most of the tax measures or tax design that focus on gross payment or on some value of asset. They seem to be stable, unlike where you are focused on profit, which is subject to business cycles or other external factors. And when we talk about stability as well, we have stability in terms of tax policies. That the tax that we put should not be subject to frequent changes that each and every year are changing, because affect the tax persons that are not stable. And also about also that the taxes must be able, that the taxpayers will be able to know when and how much they're going to pay tax. So I wanted to bring this up front to say, when we think about taxation generally, and as we go down this presentation, we have these principles in mind. And when it comes to this point, that okay, as we speak about taxation in this session, that we need net worth taxes, especially, or worth taxation, net worth tax in particular, it still remains contentious. And we'll see how these latest policy debates are going to unfold going forward. So here I would like to highlight, as I said earlier, about one of the objectives to look at the income and wealth taxation. Now, what is income taxation? So income taxation is based on income earned over a period of time. And income taxes can be levied on business profits, on wages, or income arising from movable or movable property, including capital gains. And what we see generally when we talk about income taxation, we see there are personal income taxes, that's taxes on individuals, there will be taxes on corporate income, and withholding taxes on passive income would be fees and services. Now, when we come to wealth tax, what is a wealth tax? Which is the focus of this presentation. A wealth tax is levied on the total value of personal assets owned by an individual. This could be cash, real estate, investments, business, personal property, such as cars, jewelry, and art. Mind you, I'm not talking about property tax in this presentation, which we'll discuss. I think it's the center or is the focus of this workshop. So the focus of wealth taxation, of this section, is wealth taxation, because especially after COVID, it has received a lot of attention in the policy debates. So here I would like to highlight why there's growing debate or discussion about wealth taxation. It's becoming topical these days. But of course, we really understand going forward the details on all the components of wealth taxation that we see. So, there's a growing public debate that there's an increase in income inequality generally, and there's there's pressure on the fiscus. There's the high public debts that we see, in most countries in Africa, we see that the public debts are high, maybe over 60% of GDP. And in this report by the UN World Economic Situation Prospectus report for 2024, released in January, says that in 2023, let me highlight, in 2023, 96.2% of debt, like the ratio to public debt to GDP is about 92.6%. So it means less than 10% that could be available to finance government expenditures. And in 2020, the COVID rate was 99.2%. This is putting pressure on the fiscus. So that's why there's a discussion. Maybe let's think about wealth taxation. Maybe we can generate some more revenue there. And that's why you see in the recent developments in the media, Brazil proposing a 2% wealth tax on the super rich. Yeah, it's proposed to the G20. And in 2021, because of these concerns about inequality, about the pressure on fiscus, the UN tax subcommittee, the UN tax committee created a subcommittee on wealth and social taxes in 2021. With one of the main mandate is make sure that they design a guide to help countries who do want to implement a wealth and solidarity tax in different countries. So here I'm just want to show you the levels of inequality, income inequality that we see and different jurisdiction. You see on this website is the share of national income. The blue bar is the bottom 50% of the population in a country or in a region. The apple green, 40% of the middle class or the people, and the red bar is 10%. So what is showing that, for instance, in sub-Saharan Africa, where I are, about 54% of national income is owned by top 10% of the people in that country or in the region, the sub-Saharan region. And only 10% of the people of sub-Saharan Africa, they share what? Only about 50% of the people, they're sharing only 10%, the bottom 50%. And this is sourced from the World Inequality Report 2023. And even if you look back, you see the income inequality has been there and is still there. So that's why there is concerns. Okay, can we address the income inequality? At the same time, we are generating revenue that is going to help us to meet our fiscal needs. Now, in more detail, let's step back in terms of, okay, what is wealth? We talk about wealth tax. What is wealth really? A wealth tax, a wealth is defined by the dictionaries, okay, as a large amount of money, property, which is that a person or country owns. The economic decision by Gabriel Zuckman and Emmanuel says, they define that as the total market value of financial and non-financial assets that are held by individuals or households, organizations, less liabilities. And the financial assets could be cash, if you have a lot of cash in the bank, deposits, shares, and bonds, and also non-financial assets could be movable property, vehicles, and precious goods, machinery, and intangibles. And so the question is, okay, so a wealth tax is that tax that only the rich have to pay. But who are the rich? And what does it mean to have a large amount of money? This is different for different, like a person who's rich in Africa or in one part of Africa could not be rich in some other parts of the world. So conceptually already, there is no consensus in terms of who is a rich person. It depends on the country. It depends on circumstances of a country, of individuals. Because even within a country, there are different levels. So there is that conceptual issue about wealth taxation. But nevertheless, we have wealth tax. Some countries have wealth tax, some they don't have. So here, I would like to now to look at why do we have a wealth tax? What are some of the reasons that countries have put forward as to why they want to levy a wealth tax, or they have a wealth tax? Obviously, the purpose of a tax is to mobilize revenue to finance public goods and services. So wealth tax is seen as a stable source of revenue. It's a stable source of revenue because it does not really focus on profitability, that you have made income. It focus on the assets that you have. As I said, it focus on the assets that you have. As I said, okay, it also good because it does not affect your decisions whether to work or or leisure, because they have it on accumulated capital. So therefore, okay, it's a good way to tax people, because one, we're assured of stable revenue. We're not concerned about economic cycles, booms and busts. It does not affect people whether they go to work, because we're taxing only that have accumulated. Oh, okay. As I've said, okay, they say another point is to reduce income and wealth inequality and promote social justice. As one of the reason of having a tax system, we want to sure that there's incomes distributed fairly in society, vertical and horizontal equity, and make sure that we won't promote intergenerational equity, because about intergenerational equity, one aspect of wealth taxation is that we even tax when you are transferring wealth from one generation to another, or one person to another, because we want to make sure that there is equity intergenerational in terms of from one generation to the other, and the heavier tax burden should be held by those who are rich in society. And perhaps, okay, we want to correct market failures and promote market efficiency. If people have a lot of wealth, they're just sitting idle, maybe it may not be the best way that we should encourage them to be innovative. This tax, maybe they'll say, oh, I think I'm having this amount of assets and they're being taxed on them. They're not being taxed if they have land, for instance. They're going to make or sell the land or make it used productively. Well, another objective is that, okay, let's stem political influence, because what individuals influence decisions. So they have some gain that is not taxed. So the wealth tax from this angle is that we want to compensate. The income tax does not tax certain elements. These wealth people have a certain tax capacity that if we only focus on the income tax, we're not going to reach them. And they are very influential society. They have so much benefits that other people, they don't have. So they need to contribute more, which is not addressed by an income tax system. Now, these are some of when you look in detail in terms of wealth tax, real estate, buildings, land, commercial properties, financial assets, business ownership, luxury goods, other tangible assets, and intangibles as well. These are all the components that constitute a wealth tax. But you see, and you look later when you start discussing about property taxation, about property tax, which it does not cover everything, or just that's just a few things, or real estate. Now, here I would like to highlight the conceptualization and how the countries have approached wealth taxation. How do we tax wealth? Okay, so there's one say, okay, we tax wealth based on the wealth stock, how much you have. So this has to be valued. Or if you have this, when you are transferring to someone else, we should tax that. Or what is still, when there's a capital income, we should tax that as well. Because there's a thing that it's only as regards to capital income, there's a tax on dividends, interest, and capital gains. The thinking is that, okay, those who are rich are the ones who can buy shares in other companies. They're the ones who can have give out loans and gain interest. They're the ones who have assets, and therefore they gain from capital gains, and therefore we should tax them. This kind of it's seen theoretically that when we tax these dividends, interest, capital gains, we're in a way taxing the underlying wealth that has enabled them to have this to be able to make this kind of investments. And this type of thinking is common. Most countries, they have the tax capital income. But whether it's indeed a wealth tax, I don't know. But still, other think about, okay, if somebody has reached, as you said, it's a wealth, conceptual is difficult to really measure wealth or understand what it means. Okay, there's wealth transfer. When you are transferring wealth, either maybe as a gift to someone else, or maybe when someone has died, and instead of estate duties, someone just because of course maybe someone has died, of course you can inherit some property, and therefore let's tax that inheritance or give taxes. So when you think about the this wealth transfer tax as form of estate duties, inheritance tax, they think that, okay, if we don't tax when somebody is transferring wealth, the heirs, those people who receive, they may not really work hard. They'll say, okay, I already have this fortune. Why should I work hard? It may discourage them to work hard. But for them to work hard, this tax, so they should feel the need. They should be pushed to go and work. On the other hand, someone said, no, the reason why somebody works so hard and when they die, they would want to take care of the family. Why do you tax that? And of course, in the design of waste transfer taxes, they consider that, okay, close family relations, maybe you exempt them. They should not pay, or they should pay at a lower rate. Again, in terms of waste transfer taxes, estate duties, inheritance taxes, and gift taxes, they are quite common. Most countries, they have this. But does it tax the rich? Does it tax the rich? I don't know, but we'll see. Now, the main thing about this that is dominating debate now, or that seems to focus on the very rich, is what we call the net worth tax, or a capital levy. A capital levy is the net worth tax is a recurring tax on the net worth of an individual. While a capital levy is, others call it a solidarity tax, where it's sporadic. It's not regular. A government can decide, okay, for example, some countries during COVID they had COVID levy, or they had the solidarity levy, like Mauritius. They just decide because of some financial crisis or some problems, they'll just have a levy. It's sporadic. It's one off. But first, I think, okay, when you have property tax, because also it's based on the value of a property, which is mostly real estate, we could be also thinking that maybe we're also taxing the worth of the individuals. So when it comes to net worth tax, which I'll explain a bit further, well, there are a few countries in Europe that have a proper net worth tax. Even some in Europe, they repealed. In Africa, the ones that we have seen, there are two countries. I'll mention them later. And in Latin America, who have I would say a pure net worth tax. Okay, let's go on. What are the characteristics of a wealth tax, and more specific net worth tax? We look at the tax base. When we're trying to understand a tax or a tax system, you generally look at the tax base, you look at the rate structure, are there exemptions, and how do we value it, and what's the administrative arrangements? So when we come to the tax base for a wealth tax, what I said is market value of individuals' total assets minus liabilities. This, of course, the base will include tangible and intangible assets. In terms of design, you can and it depends on a tax system that you have, because you have worldwide tax systems, we have territorial tax systems, we have tax systems that are based on citizenship. But in the case you have a worldwide tax system where you tax your residents on their worldwide income, you can include in the tax base assets from abroad. But some also, they say no, we're a territorial system, we want to focus on domestic assets. Also, in terms of tax rate, you can have a flat rate and you can have a progressive rates. So within those who are rich, you can also introduce progressive elements. So those who have more wealth than others should pay more. But there are also thresholds, minimum threshold to apply those tax. That's why I say not everyone is rich. Not everyone who, if you are paying proper tax, you are paying these other taxes, or wealth transfer taxes, or capital income such as primary residence or retirement savings, it could be exempt from the scope of a wealth tax. And valuation. So, as you said, we are taxing most on the value of the assets. So, accurate valuation is crucial, is critical for this kind of a system. And administration, they tax based on the region, the local authorities can tax, or the national tax authorities can levy the tax on the wealth tax. So, having heard about the policy objectives and also the characteristics of wealth tax, here I would like to highlight some of the challenges with wealth taxation that we should be aware of. One key is about valuation. We need to know the value of assets, because if you cannot measure the value of assets, how are you going to promote progressivity in the tax system? How are you going to promote horizontal equity in the tax system? So, especially this net worth tax, which it will require every year you're paying wealth tax, require regular valuation of properties and assets. And it's not common. There are different rules when you value assets. And also, determining the market value of assets can be complex and contentious. As I said, there are different classes of assets that are part of the wealth tax system. Some you can easily find market values. If you have cash in the bank, it's easy. But if you have intangibles, how are you going to find the market values? And some of the assets, there's no market for them. You have some expensive jewelry you bought long time ago. There is no market. Or even land, maybe they don't have proper market. So it's kind of contentious when it comes to designing a wealth tax, and the system it's reporting is based on self-reporting. You have to report on your own. Without third-party reporting, compliance can be challenged, and how are you going to enforce? Because it depends on the good of the taxpayer. What if there's a match in the house? How are you going to know? And also, if you're a cross-border situation, it's really a challenge. And also, some wealthy individuals may hide, as I said, or shift assets to low tax jurisdiction. And where capital is mobile, they will shift to avoid tax. Of course, there are some measures of dealing with tax avoidance. And the economic impact. Some critics argue wealth tax could discourage savings. If you don't have savings, how are you going to invest in a country? If you cannot invest, the economy cannot grow. So there will be slow growth of the economy. And some people say, okay, does it make sense that the cost of collection is quite high? I've thought about the administrative challenges, but the revenue that you get is less than 1% of GDP. So all the elements that I mentioned about wealth taxation on wealth, on transfer, on capital income. So when you calculate all that, is usually less than 1% of GDP. So the critics say, does it really make sense to have a wealth tax? Consider that there isn't much revenue collection. I will not saying we have to be efficient in collection, that the marginal cost of collection should be less than marginal revenue that you get when you're collecting taxes. So yeah, I don't see. So here I want to highlight some of the practical challenges that just mentioned. So this is just a hypothetical. Of course, I know that we're in Nigeria. That's why they have this person based in Nigeria. And we have UK. This person has assets in UK, has this beautiful house and a yacht or a boat, and also has a house in Mauritius, and also has shares in a company in Mauritius. So maybe if he doesn't want to stay in the UK, so I want to have a holiday house in Mauritius. The weather is nice. Is that an island? But Nigeria also has a jet, has two houses and an expensive car here. This is an expensive car. But so we see that, for instance, we assume that okay, Nigeria has a worldwide tax system, the residents on a worldwide income, and also assume that they have an annual wealth tax, the net wealth tax that I mentioned. And also we think that okay, in the UK they levy property tax, and also the same in Mauritius. They could, because property tax is based in domestic legislation of that country, so they could be different from what you levy the property tax, for instance, in Nigeria. And if you have in cross, and there's a tax treaty between UK and Nigeria. So it's okay, maybe when we're trying to get information, we can use the tax treaty. But in this case, you don't have a tax treaty, and they don't have automatic exchange of information agreements. You cannot get information now. But if the person is taxed, of course, here is taxed here, and also is taxed here, and they could be this person is facing really like multiple taxation in this instance. So what can he do? We have imposed an annual wealth tax, and maybe it's high, it's very high, he's not happy. Oh, he may decide, okay, I think I need to relocate. Maybe I can go here, or I can go and stay here. Another thing that I mentioned, the whole idea of wealth taxation, we want to promote income inequality. We want to reduce income or wealth inequality. So if this country is not sharing information with the tax authorities here, they will not be able to have a full assessment of this person. And this is one of the challenges of a wealth tax implementation, especially in a cross-border situation. And the other thing that this person says, okay, I think let me shift my residence to other countries. So it means in this, when he shifts the residence, this country is going to lose revenue. And we say want to have a wealth tax that is going to want to generate revenue. So there are really practical consequences when we are trying to design a wealth tax or a tax in general. We have to think about those principles that I mentioned earlier, because a person can decide to shift residence, and also it means that the resident state may lose, and if also they can shift their cash to some other jurisdiction, and also if the countries don't have mechanisms or tax authorities to share tax information, it's difficult to be able to tax this kind of individuals. So basically here I'm trying to buttress the point that in a cross-border situation, implementing a wealth tax can be a challenge, because some countries, they have worldwide tax system. We consider a resident on worldwide income. Some would say, okay, we consider on a domestic assets that this person have. So all these things need to reflect, are we going to achieve the objective wealth tax? when in a crowd-based, how can we best ensure that we'll be able to collect revenue? We're able to assess properly and fairly an individual who has investments abroad. So picking on those challenges that we have had. So how can we mitigate against some of these challenges? In a domestic situation, we must ensure there is a political buy-in for wealth tax measures. And we said these are people who are influential, but there has to be a wealth buy-in. There has to be a communication of how and why we're trying to introduce a wealth tax, because some people may think this is kind of confiscatory. Why are you taxing wealth? Is it wrong to be rich? So, but there has to be a buy-in, because remember, a tax is they say there's no taxation without representation. I have to be willing that I should be taxed. So I have to be willing that I should be taxed. As a rich people, then to be willing to be taxed. So the other way, and I said that the wealth taxation is based on self-reporting. You have to report what you have in your house or what assets you have. So we have to promote third-party reporting to tax authorities, because if people already they know that I cannot hide from tax authorities, because other people that I deal with, they have information and they submit to tax authorities. So it's kind of inbuilt. Yeah, there's inbuilt system that people will be able to comply when other people are reporting. So third-party reporting strengthens tax compliance inherently, and also exchange of information. We have to change information within a country. Different institutions, they need to share information. So this is part of third-party reporting. You have the cadastre, they can share information, or the banks can share information, and also the beneficial ownership requirements in cross-border situation. Also, that also need to be known, because the other challenge that is associated with the self-reporting is that the tax authority need to trace who owns these properties. Is it because some people would register the property in their kids or other relatives? So we need to know who is the beneficial owner. So there should be that sharing of information. Some like Uganda, they have what they call special high net worth individuals, a unit that is focused on high net worth. But of course, you have to invest in the resources to be able to enforce that. It's not easy. Okay, there has to be strong sanctions for non-compliance. If you have a wealth tax, okay, make sure there is strong sanctions for non-compliance for all the stakeholders that are involved, whether they have to report or they have to self-report or third-party institutions. There have to be strong sanctions for non-compliance. And we know that wealth tax can be, if you don't comply with tax system, you can be imprisoned. And investment in technology and information from different sources to have a full picture of both individuals. And I think this is one of the things that is going to be highlighted in the course of this session, because we'll talk about when proper tax systems, geospatial techniques, and technology. So now I would like to highlight some of the country experiences, the countries that have a proper net worth tax. Remember, I mentioned that there are 3 levels. You can tax on stock, with transfer, or capital income. Now I'm focused on net worth tax. This is regular. It's a component and approach taxing wealth, because remember the other approaches on wealth transfer and capital income are common. So I'm focused on this unique aspect, which in design seems to be a pure wealth tax, because other approaches, they don't really focus on the rich. They don't have this kind of exemptions as in a pure net worth tax. So in Africa, we have Nigeria, northern part of Africa. They have net worth tax, which is applied on resident individuals, only resident individuals. But worldwide net assets basis, so the real property and resident property are covered. We have private cars, they're covered, and paintings in excess of Nigerian dinar This is the dinar, the currency equals DZD, Algerian dinar, of over 500,000. And the rate is between 0.15 to 1%. They have an exemption threshold of 100 million Algerian dinar. And other exemptions in terms of assets, business assets are exempted, payments for damage are exempted, and capitalized value or life annuities. And you see, the rates for this kind of wealth tax are quite small. Maybe because the base tax base is big, but the rates are quite small. And they generate little revenue. That's why there has been concern about this wealth tax system. The other country is Tunisia. They have a wealth tax, but it's applied on real estate of individuals, spouse, and fiscally dependent children. This is very important because a wealth tax can be on an individual, or you look at the family unit. Because as I said, some people may hide, some individual may hide the assets, names of spouses or names of children or other relatives. But when you're looking at it as a unit, then you cover more, and then you can properly assess individuals. So no, you have these assets with your name of your kids. Also, it's based on worldwide net assets, real estate, both in Tunisia and abroad, and also shares on trading property companies owned by taxpayer. But you see, the rate is 0.5% of the commercial value of real estate, and they have exemption threshold. The threshold for when they are going to apply this is Tunisian dinar. So just as Algerian dinar, those have Tunisian dinars. That's a local currency, which is 3 million Tunisian dinar, and no other exemption available in terms of assets. So when we go further now, okay, that's Africa. I want to have two countries, and maybe just to highlight in Africa also that Zimbabwe, they introduced a wealth tax from this year January, but it's based on property or house. That is, if you have a private house other than your principal dwelling, which has a value over $250,000, then you are in scope, and it's 2% of that value, and the maximum that you can pay is 50,000 US dollars. So either 2% of the value of the asset above 250,000 US dollars, or of maximum $50,000 dollars. Now in Europe, we have France, Spain, Norway, Netherlands. They still have native taxes with varying exemption thresholds, assets, and rates range from 0.1% to 3.5%. In the European region. And one thing that I want to add about France, for instance, they changed their wealth tax in 2018. Before it was called wealth tax, but now they're called real estate wealth tax. So they're only focusing on real estate. But even though we have these countries that they have wealth tax, other European countries, they have repealed net wealth taxes, such as Austria, Denmark, Finland, Germany, Sweden. So when you look at the reasons that are cited as why did they remove net worth taxes, that concerns about the efficiency concerns. We're saying administration is a bit complex, and also capital flight. I mentioned there that if you tax these rich people and they can shift their residency, they have houses in different locations, they'll go away, and you're likely to lose. And the now tax base, there are no tax base. There are so many exemptions. The rates are, and as such, the base is quite small. Why should we bother? After all, there's low revenue. There isn't much, less than 1% of GDP, and it's complex. Why should we bother? When we go to Latin America, in Argentina, Bolivia, Colombia, Suriname, Uruguay, and Venezuela, they have wealth taxes with varying exemptions. They exempt private dwellings and non-luxury households. Agricultural land is exempted. Their tax rates Of course, they distinguish sometimes between foreign assets and domestic assets. But generally, their rates are ranging from 0.1% to 2.25%. So you can see that, yes, we have wealth tax, but the rates are quite small. Because, as I said, there is the influence. Those who are worth through the influence the political decisions. And so overall, as I said, that in terms of the trends in wealth taxation, low revenue yield, and within the various approaches I mentioned earlier, wealth transfer taxes and capital controls are quite common. But net worth tax is limited and has been declining. For instance, in 1990s, 12 countries in OECD had wealth taxes, others repealed, and now about 4 countries. And Latin America will have this, and others are mentioned. In Africa, I joined Tunisia. And generally, what I see, they have flat and progressive rates, and some distinction between foreign and domestic assets. The point here that, okay, we have been seeing that of course have been declining trend, but there's renewed focus in the public policy discussions. Let's tax wealth. That's where the money is. You see, most countries are talking about wealth taxation, but there are challenges. So, as countries are reflecting on this topic of we should wealth tax, I would like to highlight some of the key considerations that you have to think about: the political, economic, social, and administrative capacity. Are you able to? Do you have the political support? The economic situation, is it right? The social. We have seen when people don't like a tax, what they can do. I don't want to mention countries, but you know what happens with tax. Or tax is a kind of an emotion. It's a motive thing. People don't want to pay tax. So they have to take that consideration. More so with tax. And also think about when we want to tax, how does it contribute to the overall fairness of the tax system? Does it contribute? How is it going to contribute? Administrability, as I mentioned earlier, as one of the principles of taxation, administrability. Can we administer this, or is it too complex? But maybe you can say administer. This half loaf is better than none. Political and popular support for enactment and enforcement. A tax, as I said, is based on like social contract. You pay tax because you want to get something. Would there be political and popular support? I guess these are some of the issues that in the next discussion on public taxation, they could be worth considering. As you know, with taxation is usually look at the localities, and it's tied to make sure that people are getting the services. So it would be interesting to hear also discussion about when you are designing proper taxation and what are the changes there. So now I would like to end from where I started, just stating that the art of taxation, as we have seen, is in so plugging the goals, so obtain the largest possible number of feathers with the minimum possible amount of hissing, the smallest. So people should not really feel it. And this speaks to the concept of a neutrality of a tax system. But when you look at the tax measures about wealth taxation, there's a mix. You have an element of capital income tax, which focus on income. You have an element of those taxes that are focusing on stock, which is not about income. Just you have assets, we tax it. And the complexity which are there in terms of administration of a wealth tax. So the point I would like to end is a tax system, as we reflect on this, should maximize revenue collection from taxable persons. These are the goals. Minimum economic and political damage. There can be political damage when a tax system is poorly designed. So as we reflect on wealth taxation and other taxes that will be there, if you think about neutrality is a key principle, administrability simplicity. So as the debate is continuing for wealth taxation, and more especially for taxes, which is, as we have seen, is one that is focused on the rich because of the thresholds and exemptions, it remains to be seen how the policy advice that is being developed by the UN Tax Committee on wealth taxes, how countries are going to adopt them. And I said in Africa, the one that appears is two North African countries, Nigeria and Tunisia. Well, it's meant to see how what's the performance. It will be interesting to hear the figures about how is it performing. But generally, from history, less than 1% of GDP accounts for a wealth tax combined. I would like to end here. Thank you so much for attention. I believe I've gotten something out of this. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. John, for this very insightful presentation. If you agree with me from the presentation, we have seen that he has mentioned a number of countries that they already have a net wealth tax in place, and no West African country is mentioned. Though by tomorrow we're going to be hearing from our resource persons from the Logri, and we're likely going to hear if we have any West African country that is practicing wealth tax. So, because they have worked in West Africa a lot and they know more. But from this presentation, we haven't heard anything about West Africa. And this is why WATAF has really come up with this. We have other tax administration that already have wealth tax units and the rest. That's where we're heading to, because we know that it's going to improve our revenue. So now, at this point, I will take just two questions. Two questions, okay. I've already seen the two hands. So you can use the mic on your table. Mr. John, confirm you can hear us.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Good morning again, once again, Mr. John. You have done a very extensive discussions about wealth tax. And I think wealth tax is a topic that requires a lot of debate, which might not be exhaustive.
Please, let's hear your name, please.
Okay.
Your name.
My name is Mr. Igwe Jonas Cheka, okay, from Federal Ministry of Finance, okay, Nigeria.
All right, thank you.
So I say I want to commend Mr. John. You have done a very extensive and elaborate discussions about wealth tax. Obviously, wealth tax is a topic in taxation that have to, may require unexhaustible debate. I want to just ask you questions based on your presentation. Can we really clearly distinguish wealth tax from property tax? Because from most countries you have mentioned, you see property comes into context when we are trying to talk about wealth tax. How are we going to clearly distinguish wealth tax from property tax? If, yes, that it can be distinguished from property tax, won't that amount to multiplicity of taxations? When a person pays property tax, he probably pays capital gain tax, and he's also probably expected to pay a wealth tax. Won't this amount to multiplicity of tax if actually it can be distinguished clearly from property tax? We made a case of Nigeria, like you said. In West Africa, Nigeria has made an attempt with respect to wealth tax. When we think that was around 2018, 2017, we wanted to introduce what we called luxury tax. Luxury tax are taxes that are meant on conspicuous goods, like when you talk about high champagnes, expensive wines, and probably we also made an attempt to look at, in terms of tax on private jets, those who have private jets, that they must be taxed, and probably maybe yachts. Can this amount to wealth tax? Even though it was resisted, it was not actually, probably because there's no stakeholders um, communications or carrying them along, as you said. Could that mean a wealth tax? That's just the few questions I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. John, would you like to respond first before we take the other question?
Yeah, thank you so much, my colleague from Ministry of Finance, if I got his name correct.
Yes.
I used to work for the Ministry of Finance as well in Malawi. Now, when it comes to the property tax and different measures that countries can take, I also would have mentioned, about this with taxing. There are some countries which they 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 would like to levy a high VAT rate on these kind of things. VAT, for example, VAT rate which is high on expensive goods or jewelry. Just as my colleague has mentioned, the only country that I've seen that has high VAT rate on expensive items that are presumably by the rich is Argentina. Their VAT rate is normal rate is 15%, but if you are very rich, or the items which are assumed for the rich, they tax at the 20%. And now there's a slide which I mentioned about property tax. Does it really address the wealth tax? And when you come to, I think maybe the discussion later, they mention about property tax, the objectives. There's a thin line, really. The objectives of a property tax is about local revenue financing of local authorities. At the same time, other people think, well, if I'm taxing private jets, if I'm taxing maybe a yacht, maybe I'm also taxing the rich. The only issue is wealth tax generally, as I said, does not specify or pinpoint on a specific items. If it comes it can be a proper tax, but a wealth tax has a class of assets included, not only on one item, because if you focus on one item, you may not be able to assess broadly how much, which category, or achieving vertical equity, horizontal equity. But nevertheless, it depends on post justification. To a certain extent, you may be taxing those who are rich. Let me end there. I hope I have addressed your question. There's a thin line between property tax and wealth tax. The thin line being that property tax is limited in terms of the assets that are in scope. A wealth tax is kind of more broader. And as I said, you exempt some items, you provide some thresholds, and that kind of thing. I hope it's clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. John. I want to believe that a lot of us here are having that conflict of understanding property tax, but I know before the end of the 4 days, we will get it very clear, the difference between property tax and wealth tax. I believe that. Thank you very much. So we'll take the last question. Then only one question more, and then we're going to take the lady so that we balance the. Let's hear from her first.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. John. So my name is Abimbola. I'm from the Lagos Internal Revenue Service. Okay, so I enjoyed your insights, but my question is, we know that most tax administrations have a high net worth unit. Basically, that takes care of the tax of the wealthy, and they have a dedicated unit for this. That most of those units cover income, cover property, cover assets of the rich. So that's what I know that most subnationals have. And yes, their taxation is very, very difficult. So, of course, when you talk about a wealth tax, I'm not sure how we begin to separate the elements. Also, in Lagos State, we have a totally different agency that deals with property taxation, or rather, property registration, payments, and everything. So I'm trying to maybe find a distinction about the high net worth that we have in our subnationals and this wealth tax that you've mentioned. Also, that for us here, a separate agency deals with property and not the Internal Revenue Service. Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, I will give time for you people to make intervention, while after John has responded to this question.
Yeah, thank you. I hope I got name correct. He said it's Bimbora from FIRS. So
Lagos
I
State.
know that there's a
Lagos State
the
Internal Revenue
conceptualization of wealth tax and proper tax is really a challenge. And I know, like in different jurisdictions, there are different ways. You can have administration based on the national or regional. And one of the countries, even Europe, Spain, for instance, and Switzerland, they have their net worth tax based on the regions. But the point that I would like to highlight, wealth taxation, as I said, as a concept, what is worth, who is rich person is different, and then when you are looking at, we're not looking at the income per se, we're looking at the worth, how much somebody is having, how much worth after you have done the assessment. And so to know how much worth and which is in scope of wealth tax, that you have those elements that you design. Okay, people of this level, based on the economic circumstances, are considered to be rich. But when you come to property tax, it has a narrower scope. And now, so when you think about, you have mentioned about high net worth units, and you cover both income, you cover the assets that you have. And that's the point I wanted to mention, that. So when you think about designing wealth tax system, you think of the totality of a person, of an individual. Okay, has paid income tax and has paid property taxes, as someone said, and has paid could pay even wealth tax. So at the end of the day, what is the effective rate of this kind of people? When you look, and now if this how much are paid, in terms of the vertical equality or vertical equity, horizontal equity, where are they in the strata of the economy? So and that's a question that I at the end here I mentioned about just the point that I wanted to say about, will it contribute to the overall fairness of a tax system, the equity and fairness of a tax system? So they are not taxes on income, they are taxes on the worth. How you define worth? Okay, what said is large assets that you have in cash and whatever. But in terms of how you administer it, you can provide some exemptions, because you don't want to have everyone. Not everyone would be rich, depending on the classification of a country. So when you are taking income, that's an income, because an income is the gain that the person has. It's the extra value. You're taxing income, or property tax is you're taxing property, and there are different objectives for having a property tax. But when you want to evaluate a tax system, whether it's fair or not, then you look at the totality of the income taxes. And other people are saying, given that we have a wealth tax, those who are rich, they have other benefits that they get. Should we focus more on the income, or we should be taxing the wealth? Because wealth taxation is a complement to the income tax, because there's argument to say those who are rich, they have other benefits. Their tax capacity is more. Therefore, this tax weight, which is not based on income, is based on the fact that you have expensive assets, you have more money, you have more benefits that other people they don't have. But in terms of if you're evaluating it, is this a fair system or not? So you look at the totality, but these are distinct kind of taxes. I hope I have cried Bimbora. Thank you so much, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, please, I have to apologize. I see a lot of hands up. I know usually from the beginning of training sessions like this, when we do the introduction, a lot of issues come up. But I believe that as the sessions goes on, you will get more understanding. Probably some of the answers that you are seeking for will be in the next presentation. That is going to be on overview of property taxation. So, and that is why, and because of time also, we have already eaten into the time for the next presentation, so that we don't keep us too long here. I would just like to give a few minutes to our co-facilitators here if they have any comment. Okay, so there's no comment, we'll go straight to, okay. Our next presenter just step out. Maybe we can just use that time to take one more question.
Thank you, Mr. John. Good day, everyone. My name is Oyeka Amara. I'm from Anambra State here in Nigeria. I liked quite a lot of points that you raised in your presentation, which was constantly make me to raise my hands. For us here in Nigeria, recently, Mr. President inaugurated a committee for fiscal policy and tax reforms. And I believe that one of the things that Mr. President was looking at was to see how we can harmonize our taxes and make administration quite seamless. For me, I think this word taxation is just, okay, how do we differentiate it from the ordinary income taxation that we collect from individuals? And then what we see in the subnational is that, like Madam LRS said, they have a unit or a department designated for high net worth individuals. These are the same set of people that we're talking about. Either we classify them as wealthy or high net worth, or just ordinary individuals who will, on annual basis, pay their income tax. For me, I think if West African countries cannot really account for their tax to GDP so far, wealth taxation, I don't believe that it can make that very huge impact, given that we also have to consider the cost of collection, that's the cost of administering it. Then the other observation I have is, for example, I still make reference to Nigeria because I'm from Nigeria and I work here. We have subnationals, like the introductory person said, 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory all collecting taxes at the subnational. So a wealthy person can be considered to be from where? And the taxes, the wealth taxation should be collected by which of the subnationals or at the center? And if it's at the center, would there be any provision to say, okay, this person is from Anambra State or from Lagos State or from Kwara State, how do we transport such a revenue back to where that person is from? Or do we leave it at the center to think of infrastructures or whatever we want to do with that revenue at the center? So I believe that if it's actually going to come into existence, a lot of things need to be considered in terms of administration, collection, allocation, whatever it is, And then I feel also that is that residency rule, like I just mentioned now, or source rule, like where is that income generated? Is it generated outside Nigeria? If it's within Nigeria, where does it fall? So all of these things really needs to be given thorough discussions before we jump at it. Thank you, Mr. John.
Thank you very much for those beautiful observations. I believe that they are noted. So we'll just go straight to our next presentation, since I don't think there's any need for response from John. I would like to appreciate you John, for this session. I believe with the hands that I saw up, it was really very impacting. And if you follow us, maybe you can help to respond to some other questions virtually later on. So I will try to gather such questions and send to you. Really appreciate you for this time, and hope to see you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'll leave the meeting now.
All right.
And enjoy the rest of the programs.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Please let's give him a round of applause.